where do we draw inspiration from for new ideas and creating new things that otherwise don't exist? Because as humans, it's very hard to create something entirely novel that has never been done before. So, Millie and I were discussing this about crochet patterns just now, saying that if you see something and you have an idea and you want to recreate a similar thing, you get inspiration from that. If you have the skill to break that down and recreate it, you write it up, you have then created a pattern to create that thing. Fine. But is it yours because it was someone else's idea originally? Well, that's a tough one too, because as we said before, it's hard to come up with something novel. And there's many times Millie's come up with an idea that she thought has never existed, only to look it up and find out it does exist. And so it's a really interesting one. So in business, does it matter if you have novel ideas that are your own or not? So there is a big thing in the startup space, I think typically in info products, but I'm not sure if it happens elsewhere, called funnel hacking. So that's going through other companies' funnels or flows, sales sequences for new customers to see how they're doing it. What contact points are they having? What's the cadence, frequency? How often are they asking? All this sort of stuff, which makes perfect sense because, like, if you were to start a phone company, you wouldn't start a phone company from scratch. It's a really silly idea when there's been trillions of dollars spent by other companies to create the thing that people do like. So you'd probably start with something that looks quite similar to the iPhone, and you'd be so heavily influenced by it anyway. So at what point is an idea or a way you do something your skill, your idea, your doing, compared to, in school they'd call it cheating, in business they'd call it copying, or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Where you use someone else's work to decrease the time it takes you to do it, right? And I think the answer comes down to when you are able to make alterations to whatever it is to match the conditions that you're looking at. Really, really vague. But let's imagine, let's do an example for each, right? Crochet. You come up with this cool pattern, you reach a sticking point which is quite tricky that most people wouldn't be able to do without a certain level of skill. If you can do it, if you can do that bit on your own without any help, then the rest of it you could also do really easily without any argument. So, like, I think that's pretty much fine. Business, for an example, you can get so far just copying other people, and lots of people will often say, like, drop shipping or stuff like that, affiliate marketing, they're not real businesses because you haven't done the entire system of a business yourself. But that's also not true, because you can very much learn the skills that are super important of marketing and sales, but drop ship a product or a service. And that's probably the most important part, or at least it's the hardest part I find of business, rather than building products and creating systems. And obviously people have preferences, but that's just mine. And so I like to think of this in a business context. If you look at a business and you can't come up with or alter a strategy that you see someone else doing that's better or more efficient for your personal situation or a specific situation, that's the point where cheating causes problems. And we actually had one other example of this, which was so blindingly obvious. When Millie and I did a coding boot camp to learn to become full stack web developers, we obviously have maths and physics backgrounds, pride ourselves in our intelligence, and we were top of the class by such a long way. But the people at the bottom of the class would immediately go to ChatGPT or AI to help them do their work. And the issue is, well, first of all, they'd start off really, really fast. They'd get to somewhere really far along and be like, oh, I've just done this thing, and just plug it in, and then it breaks. And it usually breaks other stuff too. So then we dig in and try and figure out what's happened, and they're like, oh, what's this variable? How have you defined it? And they're like, oh, what? And they don't even understand what it's doing. That's where it causes problems. And In terms of drop shipping, as an example, if you get really good at sales and marketing, but you haven't had the full exposure of all of business, if you then go and start everything else, you have a skill set 10 of sales and marketing, but only a skill set of a 1 on fulfillment, customer service, customer success, legal, finance, HR. You will be capped, or rather, really get hurt by the limitations you have of all of these other skills that aren't as strong as your other one. At the end of the day, none of this really matters. I thought it was just a very interesting point of discussion. So those are my thoughts on it. So yeah, in business, I would say level up your skills evenly across the board, and deal with whatever is the hardest constraint at the time. So ours at the moment, right now, is sales. When we crack that, it will bump up, and the next issue, I don't know, will be somewhere else in the business. We will definitely find out when it happens. Have a great day, guys.